Everyone, my name is Alan Dickerson. I'm the Director of Training and Professional Development at GMA. We would like to welcome each of you to the GMA webinar on navigating the reporting requirements of SAVE and E-Verify. We appreciate your willingness to participate in this webinar and hope that you will find the information presented to be useful in your efforts to comply with the state immigration law. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the GMA website for those unable to join us this morning. We did reach our maximum number of registered participants for the webinar, which tells us this is a topic of great interest and importance to our cities. All participants are muted this morning, which prevents audio feedback challenges we have experienced in the past. We do encourage you to submit questions that you might have for our presenters. This can be done by using the question dialog box on the webinar control panel on the right side of your screen. We will log all questions and pass them on to our presenters so that they can follow up with you directly following the conclusion of today's webinar. Our first presenter today is Rushi Patel. Rushi is the Associate General Counsel at GMA. Rushi will provide an overview of changes to the state immigration law. Following Rushi's overview, we will hear from Carol Sweeney, Director of Administration at the Georgia Department of Audits and Accounts. Carol will speak about the immigration reporting requirements. And last but not least, Steve Geddes, Applications Manager at the Department of Audits and Accounts, will speak about the immigration and reporting collection system, how to log into the system and enter your data. Again, thank you all for taking the time to be with us this morning. And at this point, I will turn it over to Rushi.
Good morning, everybody. First, I'm going to go over quickly the background of the state's immigration laws. Those of you who haven't seen Georgia State's immigration laws, it's been going on since about 2006. There have been changes in the law every couple of years, and this year was no different in the 2013 legislative session with Senate Bill 160. Senate Bill 160 made some changes to the law that are key to know for our local governments, particularly our cities. I'm not going to go through the previous iterations of the law in detail, but Senate Bill 160's changes are important, and I want to go through some of those right now. Some of the major changes in Senate Bill 160 affect how you're going to collect affidavits. Now, those of you who are new to this process, there are three different parts of the law that affect local government. There's first a part of the law that requires cities to collect a contractor affidavit related to E-Verify. Now, E-Verify is a program that deals with new hires of a company or a government. The E-Verify requirements dealing with contractors are twofold. First, Senate Bill 160 requires that every city sign up for E-Verify and have an E-Verify number. Prior to July 1st of 2013, cities that had 0 or 1 employees were not required to sign up for E-Verify. That has now changed. Every city needs to sign up for E-Verify and have an E-Verify number. That is very important for this year's reports, and if you have not signed up for E-Verify, please do so as quickly as you can. The second part of that E-Verify contractor report that has changed is that the definition of physical performance of services has been altered through Senate Bill 160. Contracts before July 1st, had a different definition. Now the definition for physical performance of services requires contracts that have involve labor or services over $2,499.99 to get an E-Verify affidavit. That's very important. I think Carol's going to go into detail a little bit more on that. So contracts for labor or services, not contracts for goods, labor or services. The next change and next affidavit involves E-Verify requirements for private businesses. This is under Title 36. Under current law, any business that gets a license from your local government that has 11 or more employees is required to sign up for E-Verify before they get a license from your business. That was phased in over a number of years. We're currently at the final phase in, which is 11 or more employees. Employees are counted throughout the business, not just the location in your city, but if it's a Walmart, it's all of Walmart, all the number of employees. Finally, the third requirement is SAVE requirements with the SAVE affidavit for public benefits. The big change with SAVE requirements for public benefits is that contracts are no longer listed as a public benefit. Also, with the SAVE requirement, you no longer have to collect an affidavit every year if the person said on their affidavit that they were a United States citizen. If they said they were a legal permanent resident or a qualified alien, you do have to collect that affidavit every year. But if they filled in that affidavit and said they were a United States citizen for Joe Smith's plumbing license for your city of any town, the following year they do not have to resubmit that affidavit. These are some important changes that you need to know with the changes with Senate Bill 160. But as most of our presentation is about how to submit the report this year, I'm going to turn it over to Carol, and she's going to go into the reporting requirements, and then we'll hear from Steve about the actual submission process.
Good morning, and thank you for attending this webinar. I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about the different reporting requirements. Rushi's kind of giving you an introduction to the 3 reports that are required, but I want to get into a little bit more detail and specifics about the processes for submitting the reports. As you can see on this screen, and Rushi's already referenced this, there are 3 reports that are going to be required to be submitted to the Department of Audits no later than December 31st, 2013. And this is important. This is a change because in prior years, 2 of these reports were submitted to the Department of Audits, and the SAVE report was submitted to the Department of Community Affairs. You will now be submitting all of these reports to the Department of Audits under the same collection system, and Steve's going to present that to you a little bit later. So the 3 reports that are required are the listing of contractors hired for the physical performance of services, then the listing of each license or certificate issued by a city or a county. So basically it's like your business licenses. When you issue a business license or any other sort of occupational license, you would obtain an affidavit. You would be reporting those license issuances to our department through this report. And then the final one is the listing of each public benefit that you administer and whether or not your entity has SAVE program authorization as part of this program administration. So again, the reports are due December 31st. Our system is open already, and so if you are ready to submit your information, you have it all prepared, please, we encourage you to go ahead and start submitting the information as soon as possible in the event there are some questions or errors in your report. Okay. So for each reporting requirement, one thing that's important is only 1 submission per entity is allowed. Now, you can have multiple users going into the system to input data, but we can only have 1 record per entity. So each city, each county can only submit 1 record to us. Also, I want to make sure everybody understands what the reporting period is. It started December 1st, 2012 and ran through November 30th, 2013. And we did this so that you all had 30 days to finalize your records and your information and to correct any errors so that you could properly submit your reports by December 31st. Another important thing for everyone to make sure they know, and this is a change from last year, we will no longer accept any submissions by fax, email, or mail. Every entity needs to go through our collection system to submit their record, and if it's not submitted this way, will not be considered submitted for our department's purposes. And when you go into the collection system, and again, Steve will go over this, you will either upload a comma-delimited file or a text file, or you'll be able to enter the information directly into the system. And as you can see on the screen, the website to access the system is listed right there, https://audits.ga.gov/AUTH. So you'll be able to enter the system through that website. Also, it's important for you to know that if you do not have anything to report, or if you're exempt from a particular section in the report, you will need to indicate that to us. The fact that you don't have anything to report, if you do not submit it in the past, that was not considered being out of compliance, but now all entities are required to report, even if they are exempt from the requirements. So what I want to do is go into specifically the 3 reports that you have to submit. And the first one we call is the Title 13 Verification of Contractors, and this deals with your physical performance of services. So the bottom line for this particular code section is that entities are not allowed to do business with contractors for the physical performance of services unless the entity has verified that the contractor is authorized to use and uses the federal E-Verify program, or unless you verify that the contractor has no employees. So that's the ultimate goal of this title. Okay. Now, the physical performance of services is probably the most problematic portion of this code section, and it's a little bit more problematic this year because we're going to be working off of 2 different definitions for the physical performance of services for the 2013 cycle. Next year, we will just be working off of the definition as it's defined in Senate Bill 160, so it should be a little bit easier for everybody. But House Bill 87 basically defined physical performance of services as public works type projects, so it was building, altering, maintaining, improving public structures, including road projects. And when Senate Bill 160 was passed and became effective July 1st, 2013, they expanded the definition immensely to include any performance of labor or services for a public employer using a bid process or through contract where the labor or services exceed $24.99.99. So for this particular reporting period, it's very important to know that if you entered into a contract, for example, in April, you need to use the definition that was the definition for physical performance of services under House Bill 87. So those would be the only ones that you report. Now, once July 3rd, 2013, Senate Bill 160 passed, then you would need to follow the other definition, the expanded definition to include almost all labor or services that your entity receives. But if, for example, you entered into a contract for some services in April that meets the new definition, it does not need to be reported on your report to the Department of Audit. It would only be the ones that met that definition after July 1st. Okay, so how do public employers verify that contractors use E-Verify? There's an affidavit that you are required to obtain from the contractor actually before any sort of bid is awarded or before you enter into a contract with that particular provider. And you can locate a copy of the affidavit on our department's website. I'm not going to read this entire web address to you, but actually if you just go to audits.ga.gov and go to the bottom of our home page, you'll see a reference to immigration, and if you click on that, you can actually find the affidavits fairly readily. And this is a copy of an example of an affidavit that you would find. And as you can see, you're required to report the E-Verify number and the date that that contractor was authorized to use E-Verify. You indicate the name of the contractor, the name of the project, and the name of the public employer. And also, it's important to know that all of these do need to be notarized, so please make sure you get them notarized, or the contractor gets them notarized before they submit them to you. Okay, now there are some situations where contractors not going to have an E-Verify number, and that's okay to do business with them. And that would be a situation where that contractor has no employees. If they don't have any employees, they're not eligible to participate in E-Verify, but you can still use them for services. What you would need to do is obtain a copy of their state-issued driver's license or a state-issued ID card and verify that that driver's license or ID card was issued in a state that verifies lawful immigration as part of their driver's license issuance and renewal process. The Attorney General's office actually has a listing of all those states that do this type of verification, and most states do verify lawful presence in these states as part of their issuance for driver's license and IDs. But there are a few that don't, so I encourage you to check that listing on the Attorney General's website if you do hire vendors that are exempt from E-Verify. One thing you need to know is that if you do hire an exempt contractor, you will still need to include them on the report, and there'll be a place in the record layout for you to indicate that they're exempt from having an E-Verify number. Okay, so there's a couple points that I want to make specifically about the definition of physical performance of services. We've received some guidance from the Attorney General's office, and I would encourage everybody to look on our website and make sure that you've had an opportunity to read that guidance. It kind of gives you an overview of when you need to get an affidavit, when you don't, and some of the things that are considered to be services that would require an affidavit. So it is all on our website, and I encourage you to read it when you have a moment. But one thing is the definition talks about contracts that are awarded by bid or other contracts or contracts that exceed $24.99.99. The Attorney General's office has determined those are two different things. So any contract that you award through a bid, regardless of the amount, you need to have an affidavit from that contractor. And then also any contract for services that exceed $24.99.99, you would need to get an affidavit from that contractor. So for example, if you're just issuing a PO to a contractor and you didn't go through a bid and it's $2,600, you need to get an affidavit. Also, if you hire an individual for a service that's licensed under Title 26 or Title 43 or also by the State Bar of Georgia, you do not need to obtain an affidavit from those individuals, provided they're doing work as an individual and not on behalf of a corporation. Title 26 deals with pharmacies and drug treatment centers. Title 43 are all the professions that are licensed under the Secretary of State's office. Another important thing to remember is that if you hire a vendor under multiple contracts, you need to obtain an affidavit for each contract that exceeds that threshold dollar amount. And all of those contracts also need to be included on the E-Verify report that you submit to our department. And I referenced this a minute ago, but it is important to know that a PO is a contract. So if you are issuing or obtaining services through a vendor and issuing a PO, that is considered a contract, and the threshold amount would apply. And Rushi also mentioned that the definition has expanded significantly, and now services would include anything such as maintenance agreements for either copier maintenance, printer maintenance, computer-type maintenance services. It would include print services, consulting services. So it's a fairly large, extensive list of services that you're going to need to start thinking about whether or not you need affidavits for. And we always encourage you to seek advice from your attorney to make sure that you have gotten a good understanding of what you as an entity need to obtain what affidavits you need to obtain as an entity. Okay, so what needs to be reported to the Department of Audit? The law requires that you need to report to us the legal name and address of every contractor that has entered into a contract for the physical performance of services during the reporting period. You'll need to include the E-Verify number of the contractor, and the E-Verify number is always going to be between 4 and 6 digits long. So if you're getting a number on the affidavit that doesn't have 4 to 6 digits, or if it has letters in it, you might want to follow up with the contractor to see if you can get a more accurate E-Verify number. You also want to indicate whether or not the contractor is exempt from E-Verify, and again, that would be like if you're doing business with an individual, or if you have a contractor that doesn't have any employees, they would be exempt, but you need to indicate that. And then you're also going to include the date of the contract between the entity and the contractor. There's 2 additional fields that we're asking you all to complete for this year's report, and that's the contract number and the contract amount. So if you do have that information, we encourage you to include that on your report. And the reason we're interested in getting this information is because if there are situations where we have to go out and do audit work on this information, it's going to be, that's going to help us to track the information that we need to obtain. And I'm not going to go into this slide, but this is an example of the file layout that you're going to be submitting, and I'm going to let Steve talk about this, so we're going to pass on that one. So I just have a couple helpful tips for the Title 13 report. First of all, some of the things that we did in the Department of Audits from an administrative standpoint, because we also have to report, to make sure that we were going to be ready to submit our report in early December, is when we knew that the law changed, we identified all contractors and vendors that we do business with on a regular basis and ones that we were going to need to have an affidavit from. And we knew when the renewal periods for those contracts were up, and so we were prepared in advance to request the affidavit at the time of the renewal, so we had that stuff in advance. We also, once we obtained the affidavit, we made sure that we reviewed all of them the minute, as soon as we received them, because we did receive affidavits that definitely did not have a correct E-Verify number on, and it did take a while to work with those vendors to make sure that we got a correct E-Verify number from them. So I do encourage y'all to check them immediately and not wait till the collection system becomes open for input to start checking your information and make sure it's right. Also, what we did is we put the information on a spreadsheet as we got the affidavits, and so now we have everything already in the record layout that needs to be submitted to our department for reporting, and all we have to do is move it into a CSV file and we're ready for upload. All right, so now we're going to move on to the Title 36 reporting, which is the issuance and renewal of private employer business licenses. And one thing, this only affects the cities and counties, because those are the ones that issue business licenses. Okay, so before a county or city can issue a business license, occupational tax certificate, or other document to a private employer, you must, the private employer must provide an affidavit attesting that they are authorized to use and use the E-Verify program when they're hiring their new employees. Okay, so in this section of the collection system, what you're going to report is each business license or certificate that you issued during the reporting period. And again, the reporting period is December 1st through November 30th of this year. And you're going to include the E-Verify number if applicable. So the report that you're going to submit to the department should include the following information for each license or certificate that you issued. The license or certificate number, if available. And again, we would like to have this information even though it's not required by law. So in the event we have to audit this information, we have a reference point to start with. The name of the person that's issued the license or certificate, the name of the business that was issued the license or certificate, and again, you need to include the E-Verify number for the person that is receiving the license, and you need to indicate whether or not the business was exempt from utilizing the E-Verify program. So where do cities and counties obtain the information? Again, this information is obtained through an affidavit that's completed by the employer at the time they apply for the business license or certificate. And employers that meet the threshold criteria for number of employees as of January 1st are required to complete an affidavit documenting their E-Verify number. Employers that are applying for a business license or certificate and do not meet the threshold on January 1st would also complete an affidavit that they would indicate in that affidavit that they are exempt from the requirements. And these affidavits are actually by law required to be on the Attorney General's website, and so you can locate those affidavits on the website that's shown on this slide. And again, this is just an example of what the affidavit looks like. And again, it needs to be notarized. So one of the questions that we get is, how do you determine whether or not an employer is required to use E-Verify? And it's based on the number of employees that the employer had at the time or on January 1st of the year that they're receiving their business license. And it's a little bit more complicated this year because, again, we're dealing with two different thresholds, kind of similar to the Title 13 contractor report. But moving forward into next year, it's going to be a lot easier for everyone to understand what the requirements are. But for license issued prior to July 1st, 2013, cities and counties were required to confirm that employers seeking a business license use the E-Verify program if they had 100 or more employees. After July 1st, 2013, that criteria changed, and now businesses are required to obtain that affidavit showing that they use E-Verify if they have more than 10 employees. And again, moving forward into the 2014 reporting cycle, that criteria of 10 will be the number that you use moving forward. And again, that's based on how many employees you had on staff on January 1st of this year. So there's a couple key points to remember, and again, that January 1st is the cutoff date for determining the number of employees. And also, they do give a definition in this code section of the term employee, and it's defined as those who are supervised by an employer and withholds payroll taxes and issues a W-2, and who works 35 or more hours per week. Now, when determining the number of employees, the employer must consider the number of employees on payroll at all locations owned and operated, not just the location for which the business license is being sought. So, for example, if you have locations in 3 different cities and you're applying for a business license in a new city, you need to count all of the employees in all of the locations, all 3 existing locations plus the new location, to determine whether or not you have more than 10 employees. Okay. Just mentioning again, the Attorney General's office maintains the affidavits that can be used, and you can locate them on the Attorney General's website. You do not need to submit the affidavits to the Department of Audits and Accounts. You just need to submit the report listing all of the business licenses that are issued. However, we do encourage you to retain this information, just as all the information you needs to be retained for all the reporting, and you need to retain it in accordance with your retention policy for your particular city. And I encourage you to speak with your legal counsel to make sure you do have a good understanding of what your retention policies are for these immigration reports and the documents that you're obtaining. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Title 50 report. OCGA 5036-1 requires agencies and political subdivisions to verify the lawful presence in the United States of any person who applies for public benefits. And this is based on how public benefits are defined in the referenced code section. And there's 27 public benefits that are listed in this code section. And this is a change from the prior year because there were some that were listed, and then there were some references that were made to federal law. We don't have to worry about what federal law says now. You just need to follow this particular list of 27 to determine whether or not you issue public benefits. And the good thing, as Rushi mentioned, is contracts are now off this list. Okay, so what specifically is reported? Basically, what you're reporting to the Department of Audit is a listing of each public benefit that you are administering in your city, and then you're going to indicate whether or not you have received SAVE authorization from the United States Customs and Immigration Services with respect to that particular benefit. And then if you have no benefits, if you provide no public benefits in your city, you're going to need to indicate that on this report as well. So when an applicant applies for public benefits, what you need to do as an entity is you need to obtain at least one secure and verifiable document, such as a driver's license or a passport. And then also you need to obtain a sworn affidavit from that applicant verifying their lawful presence in the United States. And what this is intended to do is intended to determine whether or not the person is a United States citizen, a legal permanent resident in the United States, or a qualified alien or non-immigrant in the United States. Now, if the person lists that they are a qualified alien or non-immigrant, they should be listing their alien number on the affidavit. Here's an example of the affidavit. As you can see, there's a place for them to include their alien number if they've indicated they're a qualified alien. And again, this needs to be notarized as well. So for anybody that indicates that they are a qualified alien or non-immigrant and you provide public benefits, then what you're going to need to do is run those people through the SAVE program to make sure that they are actually lawfully allowed to be in the United States and therefore eligible to receive public benefits. If you do not have SAVE authorization, I would encourage you to go to the website that's listed here and start reviewing the procedures to obtain SAVE authorization for any programs that you might be administering public benefits to someone who might need to go through the SAVE program. One thing that's also important for you to remember is that if a person indicates that they are a qualified alien, and you do need to send them through the SAVE program to verify their eligibility, they can be given benefits before you receive that authorization. However, once their information comes back through the program, if it's determined they're not eligible to be in the United States, then the benefits do need to cease. So a couple key points to remember with regards to the submission of documents. Originals are no longer required. This is a change. So applicants that are applying for benefits can provide you copies of a secure and verifiable document. Also, originals can be submitted either in person, by mail, or electronically, and each city can determine what they consider to be an appropriate electronic submission. So it can be internet, it can be through fax, it can be through texting. Whatever you determine appropriate is allowable. Also, what's important to know is when you obtain documents, you're supposed to obtain documents from a first-time applicant. Okay, the people who are renewing their applications do not need to submit these documents again. Also, if a person has already submitted documents for one benefit and then they're applying for another benefit in your city, they do not need to submit these documents again. So once you have this information on file for an applicant, if they are seeking additional benefits, they have met the criteria. So with regard to the reporting requirements, again, an annual report is due to the department on December 31st of each year. And again, the reporting period is November 30th through December 1st. We're going to report this through the collection system, and all of the reports that I've talked about today are all going to be reported through the same collection system, and Steve's going to go over this in just a few minutes. And just to remind you, the way it's set up is that when you enter this screen for public benefits, you'll see a listing of all 27 benefits. You're going to mark the ones that you provide within your city, and then once you click next, those will move over to a new screen, and you'll indicate whether or not you have SAVE program authorization for those particular benefits. Once you click confirm, you have properly submitted your document. So there's an example of what it's going to look like, and Steve's going to go into that in more detail. And just a couple final points is that, again, all agencies and political subdivisions are required to submit this report. So even if you have nothing to submit, if you do not provide public benefits, you must tell us that, or otherwise you have not met your reporting requirements for this year. Okay? And I referenced our website earlier, and just wanted to mention that we do have a lot of resources available to you on our website. The web address is up there, and we have a list. We have all the required affidavits. We also have summaries of the reporting requirements and guidance from the Attorney General's office, as well as answers to frequently asked questions. One recent addition to our website is that we've created some videos. So we have videos, they're about 5 to 8 minutes long, for each one of the reports that are required to be submitted, and it'll walk you through the reporting requirements. We've also created a video that demonstrates the collection system. So I encourage you, if you have any questions, to look at those on our website. And if you can't find the information already on our website to some of your questions, we do also have a help desk, and you can go to imnhelp@audits.ga.gov and submit a question, and we will get back to you quite promptly. And I do want to mention that this is a new email address from prior years, so please use this email address and add this to a contact. So I think that is it for me, and Steve is going to give a demonstration on the collection system at this time.
Great. So again, my name's Steve Geddes with the Department of Audits, and what we're going to cover real quick, and I'll try not to restate some of the items that we've already covered. We're going to just go over some quick notes on the changes, but that'll probably be pretty quick. And then we'll talk a little bit about our website, and again, just show you where that link is so that you can find it easier. We are going to cover our login and account creation process, so if you do not have an account with us already, we'll be covering that. We'll also cover the new submission process, and we're going to walk through some of the screens, show you some example files, and go over some of the validation rules that are within the data. We also are going to, if we have time, to review how to create a CSV file from Microsoft Excel. And again, we're going to emphasize our help email at imnhelp@audits.ga.gov. If you do have any questions, whether they be about the law or technical, feel free to use that address. So again, some quick notes. All organizations are required to respond regardless of the number of employees. We are now responsible for collecting the benefits and save. And again, that the Department of Audits cannot give any kind of legal advice on HB 87 or SB 160. So again, what we wanted to do is just highlight our website and where to go for additional information if needed, that you can either search in the search bar for immigration, or we've placed a link on our home page to make accessing this area one click away from our home page. We also have frequently asked questions that we are updating, and hopefully once this presentation is over, some of your questions can be posted up there once they have been answered. The new submission site is already open, and the deadline is December 31st. Again, we will not accept any email, faxed, or mailed information to our office. It must be through the new submission site. The old submission site for prior years is now closed, and any information regarding prior year submissions should be sent to our immigration help email. No new accounts will need to be created for this new system. We have pulled over all the old accounts to access the new system. So if you do have an old account, it should already be set up and you're ready to go. We want to emphasize that more than one person for an organization can set up an account and access the system. Only one person needs to do the confirmation. An individual can also access more than one organization with an account. So you only need one account to submit information to us. Here is an example of our login screen. And if you have not created an account, you'll just use the Create New Account link to start that process. When the wizard to create an account opens up, you'll enter in your email address and select the organization type that your organization belongs to. And from there, we're going to have you fill out some basic account information. It's important to fill out all sections. At this time, you'll create security questions in case you need to recover your passphrase or your password, and you'll go ahead and create your password. After you fill out that section, we do email you an email to validate your email account. We do this in order for us to make sure that communication electronically is happening correctly, because we do send out notifications. You must click on this email or paste it into your browser to actually activate your account. Once your account is activated, then you will be able to log in and finish the process. So when you come back to our system after you activate your account, you'll be able to log in, or if you've forgotten your password, which hopefully you haven't, you can recover it using your security questions at this time. So once you log in, our account creation process is a two-step process. The first part is just creating your account, and the second part is actually requesting access to the Immigration Reform app. So once you log in, this is what your screen will look like, and you'll need to request access either through the upper menu or through the text here. You'll follow a very similar wizard as you did in creating your account, where you need to identify what your organization type is. You'll also enter in your organization name. It is important that this is an autocomplete box, and you should select your name from a drop-down that comes up after you start entering in the first few letters. Then you'll actually select the application, which will be Immigration and Reform Act Collection System, and then you'll press the Request Access button. This is the link as it would appear on your home page, and to access the system, you would just click the name of the system. The red X by the name of the system is to remove your access. So if at any time you need to remove yourself from the system, you may do that by just selecting the red X. Once you click the system and you enter it, this is an example of the home page, and I will go over each of the sections in detail. First section is to make sure that your selected entity and the submission year are selected correctly. Again, this is how you would access multiple organizations if you had access to them. And again, just to verify your submission year. This system will only have 2013 submission year starting out. We also have some helpful links right on the home page and on every page. So if at any time you do need links to instructions, frequently asked questions, or contact us through our email, those icons will help guide you in those directions. On our website, we do have downloadable PDF instructions for not only creating an account, but also submitting in the system. And again, Carol had mentioned that we've got some videos on how to create a CSV and some other information pertaining to the submission process. So starting the process, we've tried to design the home page for each of the sections that we're requiring you to do. And it's important that you complete each section in order to be compliant. So when you're ready to begin, you just click the text under each section to start that process. We also have on the screen a very clear checkbox and status, and this will show you as we move through the process where you are in this process and who and when the process was completed or started. So once we select Section 1, which is to confirm your E-Verify and authorization date, you have the ability to confirm this information or enter it in. If you've entered in this information in the past, it will be pre-populated here. And so we're just asking you to reconfirm, make sure that it's correct. If not, you can enter that information in. There are some conditions with some organizations that do not meet the requirements to obtain an E-Verify number. They must tell us that here and confirm. Again, this is meant for organizations that have tried to go and register for an E-Verify number, and through the federal site they were not able to obtain one. We also have information icons throughout the system. Those are accessed via just hovering over them with your icon or mouse, and information will be presented about each section. So we've tried to add these to help guide you through the system with information relative to those sections. So once you can enter the information or review the pre-populated information, you're ready to just confirm. Back at the home page, after you've confirmed, you'll see a nice checkbox next to that section. You'll see the status has changed to confirm, and you'll see the individual and the date and time at which it was confirmed. If this information for some reason does not populate on the home page, then it has not been confirmed. So let's go into Section 2, or Title 13. Again, you access it by just clicking the link under the section. Each of these sections for Title 13 and for Title 36 begin by asking you a simple question, which you would just need to answer yes or no. But each of these steps are broken out into 3 steps. The first step is a question. The second step is data input if you have answered yes. And the third step, after all data has been input, is confirming that you are complete with the data entry, which confirms that section. So again, for each question, you would just need to answer yes or no, and then we'll know whether you need to do any more based on that answer. So if you answer yes, then you would click Next. Then you would be presented with the 2 options to input data. Again, we accept a file upload through a CSV matching our file layouts, which are published on our website, or you can directly input the system via the Add Record. So on option 1, you would just click the Browse button to locate your file to submit, which a dialog box, Browse Windows dialog box, will come up, and you locate your file and press Open. And now you're ready to press the Upload button, which then will push your records into our system. And I will show what that screen looks like. Option 2 you have is directly input data into a form. So you would just click the Add Record, and this is what the form would look like. Again, there are several data attributes here that are not required. They are optional. And we have since added an indication on those fields to let you know as the user which ones are required versus optional. Once you are complete entering in the record, you would press Save. And that's basically going to start taking you to the Browse screen. So whether you upload a data file or you enter in records, the very next step after you save will take you to our Browse screen. I will go over each part of the Browse screen to highlight certain features within it, and hopefully it'll make it navigating your data easier. It's important to know that we've added a filter to the Browse screen so that you can search and find your records by name, which is a contains search. So you do not have to know the full name. You can look for partial names, or an error category. So there is some basic validation on the records, and we do categorize the errors so that you can find and correct mistakes quickly. So if you have uploaded a file, you can either delete all your records and fix your data in your file and re-upload, or you can actually just fix them in our system.
You can select the error code category, and that will give you a better indication of which records have failed and for what reason. So again, we do validate the records for some basic validation, and it's important to understand that we have flagged the records. Red flag means that it's an invalid record and must be corrected prior to confirming the information. You see a green flag, that means that that record does not have any validation issues and it is cleared to be submitted. We still emphasize that you review your data prior to confirmation. So once you've entered in all the records that your organization has to submit, you would then press Next to confirm the information. And this basically signals that you are complete with the process for this title, which takes you to step 3. Again, we reiterate the way that you've answered step 1 question. We also reiterate how many records that you've input into Title 13. And again, emphasize that once you confirm this, you have signaled to the Department of Audits that you are finished entering in input for Title 13. If you accidentally press this confirmation button, you would then need to request to the department to open the section back up for you to complete or to make any current corrections. So once you're finished, you would then confirm. You may get a warning message in the system. And basically what's happening is that we are looking at the E-Verify numbers, and we are warning you that you have input invalid E-Verify numbers. And at this time, we are allowing you to confirm your information. But hopefully for future submissions, you'll be aware that the E-Verify numbers that you've input are not correct. So at this point, you can say OK to confirm, to continue to confirm, or press Cancel to exit and correct any invalid E-Verify numbers. So again, once you confirm that section, you will be taken back to the home page where you'll see a nice check by that section and the status of confirmed and who confirmed it. So Section 3, or Title 36, which is the issuance of the business license, basically works exactly the same way as the Title 13. It just requires different fields and a little bit different layout. There are some organizations within our system that this Title 36 is not required. And when they log in, they'll see that on their home page as not required. So the Title 36 Step 2 data input screen looks like this. And again, we've emphasized information boxes on all fields to try and better help the user inputting data. So once we're complete with those sections, we're ready to go to Section 4. I will emphasize that any of these sections can be filled out in any order. There's no requirement for you to fill out Section 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, so you can fill them out where appropriately. So on Section 4, which is the Title 50 Public Benefit Reporting, again, you would just select the link under that section, which takes you into the Title 50 reporting. Again, Step 1 in all processes will be a basic question. Answering this question allows us to know whether we expect data input from you or not. So you would just answer yes or no, and then press Next. If you've answered yes, then we ask you to identify the benefits that you've provided. You would just check the check marks for the ones that you have provided, and then press Next. And based on the selections that you've made in the previous step, we then ask you the question about the save authorization. At this point, you would answer yes or no. You are required at this step to answer yes or no for all the benefits that you've selected. You can go back and make corrections at any time. Once you've made your selection, you'll click Next to confirm. Again, in the confirmation step, we reiterate the way that you've answered the Step 1 question, We also reiterate how many benefits that you've selected. Once reviewing this information and you feel that it's correct, then you can click Confirm. We also want to point out on all confirmation screens, we have a status history. So at any time, the system can show you the history of the changes made to these sections. We are keeping track of the date and time and all progressions through this workflow. So once you are complete, you can press Confirm. Again, after the confirmation, the system will take you back to the home page and you should see a check mark and Confirmed, and you will see the individual and the date and time in which it was confirmed. Once you've completed all sections required for your organization, you will see at the bottom of this screen, you are now complete with the submission at this time. What this means is that you have confirmed all sections. But it's important to understand that the Department of Audits can send the data back at any time. So again, in the new file submission, no files will be accepted via email, mail, or fax. All data files must be submitted through the collection system. The files must meet our format in order to be accepted. And the files need to have an extension of TXT or CSV. And we do have a limited set of validation rules within the system. So here's an example file layout of the Title 13. This is what your file would look like in Microsoft Excel or another spreadsheet tool. Again, we have these layouts published on our website. The validation rules, we're basically validating that your E-Verify number that you've collected is between 4 and 6 digits. Though our system will not flag for this year those records that do not meet this criteria, our system will warn you that you've accepted E-Verify numbers that do not meet the federal guidelines. We also are validating if you said that a record is exempt, then we are requesting that there be no E-Verify number required. We also are checking the date format for the contract date. We also are looking for contract numbers if entered, and a contract amount if entered must not contain any special characters or formatting. It must be a number. So again, here is an example file layout. So what I'm going to do real quick, we're running low on time, but I'm going to go through this process. But we do have this posted on our website. So if I go quick, feel free to watch the video on our website. So in order to create a CSV file from Microsoft Excel, you would find the File tab, or once you have your file filled out, you would find the File tab at the top. Then you would find the Save As option. Then you would change the Save As file type to CSV, delimited. Then we recommend that you change the name of your file and use a naming convention so that it's easier to identify and submit the correct file. That naming convention recommended is your entity name, the year, the title that you're submitting for, and the number. Again, our system does not require this. This is just a recommended step. You will get prompted several times from Microsoft Excel, and this just means that you're saving your file as something other than a spreadsheet. You would just say OK to the first box and yes to the second. This is an example of what your file would look like in Notepad or a text editor. So after you create your CSV, you'll want to close out Microsoft Excel. And from this point forward, we would probably recommend using a text editor like Notepad in order to make any modifications to your file. It is important to note that our file system does not want there to be a header record. So in this example, there is a header record, which is the name of the fields in the file. You would need to remove this or else it'll fail validation. So this is an example of the file with the header record removed. So again, some things to remember. The system is open. The deadline is December 31st. If you do have questions, please check our frequently asked questions listing. Feel free to email the immigrationhelp@audits.ga for other questions. Again, we will accept no email, fax, or mailed submissions. And you have the option of submitting a data file or entering directly into the system.
At this time, our presenters, a special thanks for our presenters, Rushi, Carol, and Steve. As a reminder, the recorded version of this webinar will be made available on the GMA website in the near future. Also note that on GMA's website you will find a publication on immigration law in Georgia. This can be found under the Resources tab. For those of you that have submitted questions, please stay tuned for direct follow-up from one of our presenters. Again, thanks for joining us for today's webinar.